Catabree is probably the most enjoyable character to play in Dark Alliance, to me anyway. Her moveset is super fun and it's pretty overpowered. And also, you can kind of just stand 10 feet away from enemies, and 9 out of 10 times they don't attack you. It's kind of cheesy. But let's get into this build I have made for you guys. Oh hey, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you like this video. Let's go. Now, the thing with Catabree is it's super easy to cheese the game. You can just stand outside the combat arena and rain arrows on the bad dudes. Your damage does scale at a distance, so you don't do as much, but you can kind of find that sweet spot about kind of 10, 15 feet away where you're doing your maximum amount of damage with your charge shot, and most of the time they won't actually attack you. The main focus with your charge shot as well should be to hit the ground next to the target, so the 3 shot splash damage hit the target rather than the single direct arrow. This practically means you do a ton of damage and one shot a lot of the weaker enemies, and it also makes you untouchable because of the stagger that it does, even if they are coming towards you. Now, I don't want to teach you how to play this game like a mouse and hunt that cheese, but Catabree is a super fun character. Even if you don't cheese, I do think the cheese is going to get patched out, so we're going to take the assumption with this build that it doesn't exist, though it does. Basically, the way to play Catabree normally in solo play is you want to leverage her high damage arrows and quick attacks and quickly dodge and avoid damage as much as possible. You want to focus on the lower health targets first, then move around the battlefield. Basically, kite, and kite some more, deal as much damage as you can, and keep sprinting around the battlefield. Catabree has a very low amount of HP, and unless you want to stack Constitution a huge amount, there is no way to mitigate this. All of her big, heavy-hitting attacks that you will be using constantly decrease her maximum stamina, so you regularly have a low amount of stamina with Catabree, so you really want to make sure that you're kiting enemies around, staying out of distance. You've still got a little bit left to roll, and then you can break down enemies with your charge shot as much as possible. The only time you want to be in melee range is to trigger some dot effects or damage over time effects on enemies like bleeding or poison. There are certain moves that Catabree can do that will trigger both of these effects just by doing the one moveset on enemies, especially for bosses. This is critical and it does a huge amount of damage, but you really need to make sure that you're only doing this at a time when you are not going to take unwanted damage, because you can die very easily. Now, let's break down how to put this build together. For abilities in solo play, you want the 2 abilities that stop enemies from reaching you. That is Heartseeker Volley, which basically slows enemies and deals a little bit of damage over time, and Ensnaring Strike, which calls forth grapple in front of you. These thorns will attach themselves to enemies and stop them from reaching you. Preventing enemies from attacking you in melee range is your primary focus as Catabree. That's why we are choosing these 2 abilities. If you're playing in co-op, I would recommend to run the Healing Spirit, because you can heal your allies pretty much free of charge without having them use a potion. There is often times when you need potions and you don't want to waste them. Having this to just be able to top up your health bar is super important, especially in co-op play. If you are playing in a large group, I could see the need to have Resurrection, which revives all down allies, but it's probably outclassed by some of the other abilities, and you can kind of res people very easily in this game anyway. Now, for the moves, I don't want to cover them too exclusively, as realistically, you just need to pick up every single move that there is. However, the 2 main moves you want to focus on is Bouncing Arrow. When you do trigger this combo, you do have a chance to inflict bleed and poison both on the enemy, as well as Rollback Shot for the same reason. It has a 50% chance to trigger bleeding and poisoned on the target. Because of these effects, we want to trigger them as much as possible. Bouncing Arrow also gives you some ultimate charge and stamina back, but the key thing is getting these damage over time dots on enemies. Both of them do a ton of damage, and if you trigger both of them on one enemy at once while attacking from range, you can just melt enemies very easily, especially bosses. Bosses really are a breeze for Catabree. And for your attributes. Now, Catabree's attributes, she is a ranged fighter, so the key one here is dexterity. This will increase your physical damage as well as your critical hit chance and critical hit damage, which is obviously huge for Catabree. Some of her other abilities also increase her crit hit chance and damage. Both of these are super important so you can melt enemies. Next, I think it's a toss-up between intelligence and constitution. I have primarily chosen intelligence because of the elemental effects that it will increase their damage, like poison and bleeding, and we are going to be applying this regularly to enemies. Having this effect on enemies for longer, dealing more damage, is more important. Although Constitution is also important for the increased stamina and stamina regen, as well as increase to your HP, but the way that you can play Catabree is it doesn't necessarily matter how much health you've got in general, because you can avoid damage overall, and even if your stamina is low, it hasn't bothered me too much. I've pretty much gone a full damage build with a little bit of Constitution, but it's up to you if you want to go Constitution first if you are worried about taking too much damage. For your feats, now basically the feats you want to focus on is the offensive and support lines, being the archer and the cunning line. In the archer line, this is the offensive line, just pick up everything, but some standouts is precision shot to increase your critical damage for arrows, sharpshooter to increase your critical hit chance, and piercing arrow to increase your physical damage bonus for charged arrows by 100%. So you can see why we are focusing a lot on using our charged shots. This is going to increase our damage by a huge amount. For cunning, you mainly want to stick with the one tree, specifically the one that has the endurance stamina bonus. However, I would also recommend to pick up scavenger because we will be using stamina potions a lot to refresh our stamina, and having that extra usable is not a bad idea. Any leftover points, you can funnel them into the long strider line to get extra HP or armor bonuses, though the way that you really pay Catti-brie, if you are taking a lot of damage, you're doing something wrong. So this is kind of less important as just having the support and the offensive lines maxed out as early as possible. For your potions, obviously the health potion, we don't need to talk about that. Stamina potion is super important, and it's the main reason why you would pick up the scavenger feat as well. Because Catti-brie's attacks use up her maximum stamina, you want to be refreshing this as much as possible, which is where the stamina potion comes into importance. You will be using this a lot with your charge shot and her other abilities, and you often are going to have half stamina, is your pretty much full stamina is half. So having this ability to increase your stamina when you need it is also important. The last two slots are really up to you. I personally have gone with the Elixir of Concentration to reduce cooldown reduction for the ability so that I can keep enemies away from me. Also, if you're in co-op, this will help you get your healing off a bit more, and the Potion of Heroism to give me extra ult charge is always valuable. Now it's time to gear up, and the focus for this build is really going to be on two sets. And funnily enough, I mentioned in my Wolfgar video I had terrible luck with loot. With Catti-brie, I have had a huge good luck with loot. I've got a ton of legendaries and a ton of really good gear, so it's been a huge fun time for Catti-brie. Now, the two sets you want to focus on is Tundra Explorer, which increases your physical damage. You want to get this to 5 out of 10 for that 15% increase, and the Goblin Reaper to increase your critical hit chance. Because our critical hit damage is so high, the more often you can critical hit, the better it will be. The Battle Hammer line is interesting as well, which reduces your cooldowns even more. I have toyed around with this, and I do actually seem to use it because the legendary bow that I have is of this set, but these are the two primary sets you should focus on, is Tundra Explorer and Goblin Reaper. Now for your weapon, I highly suggest you get a weapon that has an elemental effect on it, especially cold. If you get really lucky, you should always use a cold weapon because it stun locks enemies, which is a huge thing for Catti-brie, who has such a low amount of health, and you want to be avoiding damage as much as possible. If you can stun lock some enemies in the fight, this just makes things so much easier. And some general tips for playing Catti-brie. Now, I said it earlier, but kite, and kite some more. You never want to be standing still. You want to be avoiding damage as much as possible. Run all the time. Sprint everywhere. Sprint doesn't reduce your stamina. It does stop your stamina from regenning. So if you are sprinting around, make sure you pause for a second, let that stamina regen, and then go in for the kill. You only want to melee when you are certain it is safe, because you will die instantly regardless of the difficulty you're playing on. It's very easy to die as Catti-brie. And really just cheese it up, right? Now, it's very easy to push tiers with Catti-brie because of the cheese in the game. Even without the cheese, I find that she is a very simple character to push tiers with because she does so much damage. As long as you can avoid hits, you can have a really good time with Catti-brie. Now, if you're looking for more builds, check out my Wolfgar build, which goes through my Fury Barbarian build for Dark Alliance. Please follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and on Twitch, where I stream 2 days a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, Australian night times. Hope to see you guys there in the next stream. Thank you for watching this video. My name is Norza, and I hope you have a great day.